4 men entered the night laughing. By dawn, only her footsteps remained. They broke her body, she broke their lives. The city had gone quiet, but for Vanessa Cole, the silence was heavy with dread. She had left her late shift at the diner just after midnight, clutching her worn leather bag and wrapping her coat tightly against the cold. The streets were empty, but she knew better than to feel safe. In her neighborhood, danger often hid in the shadows. She turned down a narrow alley, hoping to cut time off her walk home. That's when she heard the echo of footsteps behind her, slow, deliberate, mocking her every step. Vanessa's heart pounded as she quickened her pace. The footsteps quickened too. From the corner of her eye she saw them. Ricky Doyle, with that smug grin he always carried, flanked by his crew, Travis T-Bone Miller, broad as a wall, Eddie Kane, with nervous eyes that still glimmered with cruelty, and Luther Briggs, the silent one whose stare pierced deeper than any words. "Going somewhere, sweetheart." Ricky's voice was low, dripping with menace. Vanessa clutched her bag tighter, her voice steady despite the fear rising in her chest. "Leave me alone." But Ricky only smirked, circling closer, while the others fanned out like wolves. "Nah, see, we've been waiting for a night like this." The alley felt like it was closing in, walls pressing tight, no escape in sight. Vanessa's pulse thundered in her ears, every instinct screaming at her to run. But where? They cornered her, taunting, mocking, dragging the moment out to savor her fear. It was a night that would stretch endlessly, each minute a torment that cut deeper into her spirit. But what they didn't know, what none of them could possibly imagine, was that this night would not end the way they thought. At dawn, Vanessa Cole would rise not as prey, but as something far more dangerous. The clock inside Vanessa Cole's mind seemed to stop. Every second dragged like an eternity as the gang circled her. The walls of the alley, stained with old graffiti and damp with last night's rain, became a prison. Ricky Doyle loved control. He leaned in close, his grin wide, his breath sharp with whiskey. "You look scared, Vanessa. You should be. Tonight you belong to us." His words crawled across her skin like poison. Travis T-Bone Miller cracked his knuckles, the sound echoing like gunshots in the narrow passage. His bulk was intimidating enough, but his hunger for violence was worse. He shoved her bag aside and sneered. Eddie Kane laughed nervously, playing the hyena to Ricky's lion. He was always crueler when someone stronger was around, desperate to prove himself. "She's not going anywhere. Not tonight." And then there was Luther Briggs, the silent one. He didn't speak, but his eyes never left her, cold and calculating. His presence alone pressed the weight of dread deeper into her chest. Vanessa fought to steady her breath. Fear was there, yes, but beneath it, something else was stirring. Rage. She kept her expression blank, hiding it, knowing one wrong move could set them off too soon. Hours bled together. The torment stretched on, the night suffocating her, stealing every ounce of safety she had ever known. But in the darkness of that alley, something inside her hardened. She memorized their faces, their voices, their laughter, each second etched into her memory like a blade carving into stone. They thought they were breaking her. They thought they were in control. But by the time the first light of dawn broke the horizon, Vanessa Cole was no longer the same woman. She had already begun planning how this night would end, and it would end in blood. The alley reeked of smoke and sweat, the air thick with menace. Vanessa Cole sat slumped against the wall, her coat torn, her spirit tested. Hours had passed, yet dawn felt a lifetime away. Ricky Doyle crouched in front of her, his grin stretching wider, his eyes full of cruel satisfaction. "See, Vanessa, this is what happens when you think you're better than us. You're just another girl who should have kept her head down." His words were meant to crush her, but inside, Vanessa's fire only grew hotter. Every insult, every shove, every mocking laugh from Eddie Kane, she stored them away like arrows in a quiver, saving them for later. Travis T-Bone Miller, restless and itching for more violence, slammed his fist against the brick wall inches from her head. Dust rained down, but Vanessa didn't flinch. That was her small victory. She refused to give him her fear. Luther Briggs lingered in the background, silent as always. But when his eyes met Vanessa's, she didn't see power. She saw emptiness. He was dangerous, yes, but also hollow, like a man with nothing left to lose. Vanessa lowered her gaze, masking her rage beneath an appearance of surrender. Let them think they'd broken her. Let them believe she was too weak to fight back. But inside, she was calculating. She studied where they stood. She memorized which pocket Ricky had stuffed his knife into. She noted how Travis's heavy steps slowed when he got tired. She clocked the way Eddie constantly fidgeted, unable to stay focused. Every detail was a weapon waiting to be used. By the time the sky outside began to shift from black to grey, Vanessa Cole had reached her breaking point. But it wasn't despair. It was the breaking point where prey becomes predator. A faint shimmer of dawn crept into the alley, spilling over the jagged rooftops. The light was pale, but to Vanessa Cole, it was a signal. The night was almost over, and with its end would come her reckoning. Ricky Doyle stretched, rubbing his arms. He looked satisfied, smug in his belief that Vanessa was broken. "Long night, huh, boys?" His laughter cut through the early morning air. "Guess you'll think twice before walking alone again." Travis T-Bone Miller snorted, his voice thick with exhaustion. "She ain't thinking about anything. She's done." He leaned against the wall, eyelids drooping. The big man was tired. Vanessa took note. Eddie Kane lit a cigarette with shaky hands, smoke curling upward. He was jittery, more nervous now that the adrenaline was wearing off. His cowardice leaked through in every tremble. And then there was Luther Briggs, still silent, still watching. His stare was unreadable, but his position near the alley's exit told Vanessa everything she needed. He thought he was guarding the way out. Vanessa adjusted her posture. She made herself smaller, weaker, as if she were too drained to move. But inside, her mind was sharper than ever. Each detail became part of her plan. Her fingers brushed the ground until they found a shard of broken glass, half buried in dirt. She palmed it quickly, keeping it hidden beneath her torn sleeve. The gang had spent the night tormenting her, believing Dawn would erase their sins. But Dawn was not their salvation. It was their sentence. Vanessa stared at Ricky Doyle, her eyes no longer empty but blazing with quiet resolve. For the first time all night, she allowed herself a thought that gave her strength. By the time the sun fully rises, one of you will fall. The alley was fading from night into day, shadows thinning as the pale sun crept higher. Ricky Doyle stretched his arms wide, careless, as if he owned the streets. "Boys, I'd say that's a job well done," he chuckled, his arrogance filling the silence. Vanessa Cole sat slouched, feigning weakness. Her hair was matted, her lips split, but her eyes burned with something none of them noticed. Beneath her sleeve, the shard of glass pressed into her palm, sharp enough to cut flesh. Travis T-Bone Miller yawned, his massive frame sagging with fatigue. Eddie Kane leaned against the wall, puffing on his cigarette with shaky drags. Luther Briggs stood near the exit, silent and brooding but distracted. Vanessa's moment came when Ricky crouched in front of her again, taunting. "You'll remember this night forever, sweetheart. And you'll remember my face most of all." That was his mistake. With a sudden burst of strength, Vanessa's hand shot forward. The shard slashed across Ricky's cheek, carving a crimson line from jaw to ear. His triumphant smirk collapsed into a scream as he stumbled back, clutching his face. The others froze, stunned by her defiance. For hours, she had played the part of broken prey. Now, in a heartbeat, the roles had shifted. Vanessa scrambled to her feet, her chest heaving with adrenaline. "Remember it?" She spat, her voice shaking but fierce. "I'll carve your names into history." Travis roared and lunged, but his sluggishness betrayed him. Vanessa darted aside, his fist slamming into brick instead of flesh. Eddie dropped his cigarette, panic flashing across his face as smoke curled at his feet. Luther's eyes narrowed, finally stepping forward. The night of torment had ended. The morning of vengeance had begun. Ricky Doyle's scream echoed off the alley walls, blood dripping between his fingers as he clutched his torn cheek. Rage twisted his once smug face. "You little," he snarled, but the words choked off in pain. Vanessa Cole didn't flinch. The shard of glass still gleamed in her grip, streaked with red. She stood tall now, no longer hunched in fear. Her body ached, but fury gave her strength. Travis T-Bone Miller barreled toward her, his bulk shaking the ground. Vanessa sidestepped, quick and precise, and jammed the shard across his forearm. He roared, stumbling as crimson splattered the wall. His power meant nothing if he couldn't control it. Eddie Kane froze, paralyzed between fight and flight. His cigarette smoldered on the ground, forgotten. His hands trembled as he muttered, "This ain't how it's supposed to go." Luther Briggs finally moved. Silent as a predator, he cut off Vanessa's escape path, his gaze cold and unreadable. He wasn't rattled like the others. He was calculating. Dangerous. Vanessa's chest heaved, every breath a mixture of pain and adrenaline. The glass shard was slick now, hard to grip. She knew she couldn't rely on it for long. She needed to outthink them. Ricky staggered upright, blood painting his shirt. His fury burned hotter than his wound. "She's mine," he growled, pointing at Vanessa like a man claiming property. But Ricky didn't understand. Vanessa wasn't his possession. She was his reckoning. The sun had risen fully now, spilling golden light into the alley. For Vanessa, it wasn't just morning, it was justice. She met their eyes one by one, her voice steady. "You should have finished me when you had the chance. Now, I finish you," and for the first time the gang felt fear. The sun rose higher, spilling light into the alley like a spotlight on a stage. The night had belonged to Ricky Doyle and his gang. But the morning? The morning belonged to Vanessa Cole. Ricky's cheek gushed crimson, his swagger replaced with rage. Travis T-Bone Miller clutched his arm, blood dripping between his fingers. Eddie Kane twitched nervously, his cowardice growing louder with every second. And Luther Briggs, the quiet shadow, studied her like a hunter sizing up dangerous prey. Vanessa stepped backward, toward the open street. Her movements were deliberate, eyes never leaving theirs. "You wanted me cornered all night," she said, her voice cold. "Now it's your turn." Ricky snarled and lunged, but Vanessa bolted, not in retreat, but in strategy. The alley emptied into a maze of back streets she knew well, streets she'd walked her whole life. They thought they were chasing prey. She was leading them into a trap. Travis thundered after her, his heavy steps pounding the ground. Eddie followed reluctantly, muttering curses, while Ricky staggered in fury, blinded by revenge. Luther trailed behind, calm and calculating, eyes narrowed as if curious to see how far Vanessa would go. Vanessa darted around corners, past boarded windows and rusted dumpsters. Her lungs burned, but adrenaline fueled her legs. Every turn she took was chosen with care, each path tightening the noose. She ducked into a crumbling warehouse, its windows shattered, sunlight streaking through broken beams. Dust filled the air, thick and choking. Vanessa crouched low, gripping a rusted metal pipe she had grabbed from the ground. Her heart thudded steadily now, not with fear, but with resolve. One by one they would enter her world, and one by one they would not leave it. The warehouse creaked as the gang poured in, their shouts bouncing off the hollow walls. Dust danced in the beams of sunlight, cutting through broken glass. Vanessa crouched in the shadows, her grip tightening around the rusted pipe. Her breathing slowed, steady, like a predator waiting for the exact moment to strike. Travis T-Bone Miller stormed in first, his bulk filling the doorway. "Come on out, sweetheart," he bellowed, his voice booming through the empty space. His heavy boots thudded against the cracked concrete floor, each step shaking dust loose from the rafters. Behind him, Ricky groaned from his wound, but pushed forward with fury. Eddie Kane lingered by the door, hesitant, glancing back toward the alley as if escape still tempted him. Luther Briggs remained unreadable, scanning the warehouse with a calm that unnerved even Ricky. Vanessa's eyes locked on Travis. He was the brute, the muscle, the one who believed size made him invincible. She shifted silently, circling the beams as he lumbered deeper inside. His fists clenched, ready to crush her when she revealed herself. "You think you're tough now?" he roared, hiding like a scared little. The sentence never finished. Vanessa exploded from the shadows, pipe swinging with the precision of rage and training. The metal connected with his knee, a sickening crack echoing through the warehouse. Travis howled, stumbling forward. She didn't hesitate. Another swing, this time to his ribs. Then a final, brutal strike to the back of his skull. His massive frame crashed to the floor, shaking the ground. Silence followed, shocking, heavy, final. Eddie gasped, stumbling back. Ricky cursed through clenched teeth. Luther only tilted his head, intrigued. Vanessa stood over Travis's fallen body, the pipe dripping with blood and dust. "One." "Down," she whispered, her voice carrying in the cavernous warehouse. And the hunt pressed on. The silence after Travis's fall was deafening. Dust hung thick in the air, swirling in the shafts of light. Eddie Kane's eyes darted between Vanessa and the crumpled body of his fallen friend. His throat went dry. He had been in fights before, but this wasn't a fight. It was a war, and Vanessa fought like something far more dangerous than human. "Man, forget this," Eddie muttered under his breath, taking a shaky step back toward the open doorway. His hands trembled, sweat pouring down his temples. He told himself he wasn't a coward, just smart. She ain't worth dying over. But Vanessa heard every word. Her gaze snapped toward him, sharp as a blade. She took a single step forward, pipe dangling from her side, stained with Travis's blood. Eddie froze. His knees weakened. "Where you going, Eddie?" she asked, her tone low and cutting. "You came all this way. Stay." The sarcasm sliced through him, and panic erupted. He bolted for the door, pushing past a half-broken crate. "I'm out!" The sound of his boots echoed down the hall, frantic and uneven. But Vanessa was faster. She dropped the pipe and sprinted, every muscle coiled with rage and precision. Before Eddie reached the exit, she leapt, tackling him hard into the concrete wall. The air shot from his lungs with a strangled gasp. Don't!" he pleaded, tears streaking his dusty face. "I didn't even touch you that day. It was Ricky and Travis, I swear." Vanessa's grip tightened on his collar, pinning him to the wall. Her eyes burned with fire, inches from his panicked face. "You stood there. You laughed. That's all it takes." Her knee drove into his gut, and Eddie collapsed, wheezing, clutching his stomach. His fear was raw, naked, undeniable. Ricky spat in disgust. Pathetic. But Vanessa wasn't finished. Not yet. Eddie had chosen to run, and in her mind there was no running from what they had done. Eddie lay sprawled on the floor, gasping for breath, his palms raised in surrender. His pleas came out broken, scattered between sobs. "Please, Vanessa, I didn't want no part of it. I just laughed. I didn't touch you." Vanessa crouched low, her face inches from his. The tremor in Eddie's body made her pause, not out of pity but calculation. She could end him right there, just like Travis. But then her eyes flicked to Ricky and Luther still standing tall across the warehouse. She wanted them to watch. She wanted them to know. "You're right, Eddie," she whispered, her voice chilling in its calm. "You didn't touch me, but you let it happen. You made me small with your laughter." She brushed a blood-matted strand of hair back from her face. "Now I'll make sure you're remembered as the fool who couldn't laugh his way out of death." Before Eddie could protest, Vanessa wrapped the chain she had ripped from the wall earlier around his throat. With a vicious pull, she dragged him upward against the wall beam. Eddie's screams cut short, replaced by desperate gurgles. His legs kicked, scraping at the air, pounding against the wall. Ricky's smugness cracked. His eyes went wide as he muttered, "Oh, hell no." Luther clenched his fists, muttering under his breath like a soldier trying to steady himself. "She ain't human." The chain clattered as Eddie's body went limp. Vanessa stepped back, letting him dangle for just a moment before releasing him. He slumped to the floor, lifeless, eyes still open in shock. Vanessa turned slowly, her breathing heavy, her lips curled into something between grief and vengeance. She pointed the bloodied chain toward Ricky and Luther. 2 down, 2 to go. The silence was suffocating. Ricky sneered to mask his fear, spitting to the side. "You're insane, girl, and now you're going to die insane." But even his words quivered. He had just watched death handed out like judgment, and he knew his turn was coming. The warehouse felt smaller now, echoes of violence folding the space inward. Dust floated in the shafts of light. Vanessa Cole stood amid the wreckage, clothes torn, hands trembling but ready. Only Ricky Doyle and Luther Briggs remained, each a threat in his own way. Ricky's cheek bled where Vanessa had slashed him. Pain carved his features, but his eyes still held a frantic, cunning light. He tried to twist the moment into advantage. "You won't get away with this," he snarled, reaching for a rusted pipe on the floor. Vanessa watched him instead of reacting. She had learned patience. Her plan had been born in the long hours of torment. She knew how cruelty thought. Ricky grabbed the pipe and hurled it toward her, a clumsy bluff meant to separate them. The pipe skittered and landed uselessly by her boot. Luther didn't move much. He stepped forward now with a measured pace, silent and dangerous. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. His presence tightened the air. Where Ricky raged, Luther calculated, an iceberg beneath the calm surface. Ricky barked orders, trying to rally fear into courage. He lunged, wavering, furious and reckless. Vanessa reacted, striking his knee hard. He buckled, cursing, collapsing into dust and anger. Luther closed in, cutting off Ricky's retreat. He circled Vanessa with slow, efficient steps, searching for weakness. She looked back at him, feeling the weight of every stolen moment, every memory of humiliation. Her breath steadied. This was the last choice. Vanessa picked up the pipe at her feet. It was heavier than it looked. She gripped it like a pen writing an ending. Luther's eyes never left hers. Between them, the warehouse held its breath. She moved first. There would be no mercy, only reckoning today. The sun had barely risen, spilling pale light through the warehouse windows. Broken glass caught the glow, scattering it across the floor like shards of fire. The scene looked less like a battleground and more like a graveyard. 3 men already silenced, their shadows stretched long against the cracked walls. Only Luther Briggs remained. He stood calm, unshaken, his fists wrapped in quiet menace. Ricky Doyle, battered and gasping, dragged himself against the wall, clutching his broken knee, his eyes darting between Vanessa and Luther. He knew his survival depended on who won this final clash. Vanessa Cole's body screamed with exhaustion, muscles raw, but her spirit blazed hotter than ever. Every bruise, every drop of blood had become a reminder. This was not about survival anymore. This was about justice. Luther stepped forward, slow and deliberate. "You've made your point, girl," he rumbled. "But it ends here." "No," Vanessa replied, her voice steady as stone. "It ends with you." The fight erupted. Luther swung with brutal precision, each strike powerful enough to break bone. Vanessa ducked, parried and countered, her pipe clanging against his fists like steel on stone. Sparks flew in her chest with every breath, but her rage sharpened her movements. At last she saw her chance. As Luther lunged, she sidestepped, bringing the pipe down with all her strength against his skull. The crack echoed, his knees buckled. But he didn't fall. He reached for her throat, snarling, until Vanessa drove the jagged end of the pipe straight into his chest. His eyes widened. He staggered, choking on disbelief, before collapsing beside his fallen brothers. Silence reclaimed the warehouse. Vanessa stood alone, the morning sun warming her blood-stained face. She dropped the pipe, her hands shaking, her body trembling not from fear, but from release. She had taken back her power. She had written her own ending. And as she stepped into the dawn, leaving 4 bodies behind, the world outside would never know the truth of what happened here. But Vanessa did, and that was enough.